r/AskReddit. What's your best true spooky story? Serious, part 3. I really love these threads, but never leave a comment. I'm from Scotland, and when I was a child, my mum and dad took my sister and I on a trip to Fort William, which is a town up in the Highlands. People go there for skiing and hiking. It wasn't winter, so we were there to do some easy hiking. My sister and I were quite young. I was about 11, and to stay for a couple of nights. I can't remember the name of the hotel we stayed at, but I do remember that it was old-fashioned, and we were all in one room together. There was a single bed, where I was sleeping, a double bed in the middle, my parents were there, and another single on the other side, my sister's. I was often frightened when I was a girl. I didn't like the dark, and I was super scared of the possibility of ghosts, etc. I never found it easy to sleep because of this, even at home. I vividly remember tossing and turning that first night in the hotel for a long time, before lying on my back and trying to calm myself down. I then felt the bed sink a little next to my feet. I heard the creak of the old mattress. Someone was sitting at the foot of my bed. My heart was honestly pounding. I hadn't heard my sister or parents get up, so I was terrified. Whatever was sitting there quickly moved so it was sitting on my feet. I felt the weight of whatever it was. I heard the mattress creak again. My feet were freezing cold. It then moved off my feet, and settled down next to them again. The old mattress shifted and creaked again. Within a second or two, I felt the coldest I've ever felt, but not throughout my whole body. The coldness was slowly rising up from my feet, accompanied by a feeling of pressure. I was too scared to open my eyes. I was willing myself to call for my mum, but I was so scared that I just couldn't at first. When I managed to shut out and wake the rest of my family, the cold, pressured feeling had reached up to my knees. When the lights were switched on, the feeling vanished. I have no explanation for this whole situation. My dad slept in that bed the next night, and I stayed awake the whole night in the double with my mum. I came home from work one day to grab my spare tires. My sister was away at school 7 hours away and neither of my parents were going to be home for another 5 hours at minimum. I ran in, changed my clothes, grabbed my tires, then drove to a garage to get them installed. I got home 2 hours later, and as I walked into the living room, there was a chair just sitting in the middle of the hallway and was facing the front door. I thought nothing of it but didn't recognize the chair as being one that we owned. It was a standard metal folding chair that you would buy for a couple bucks at a retail store. I folded it up and propped it up against my dad's workbench in our garage. My mom gets home a couple hours later and I ask her in passing why she left a metal chair in the middle of the hallway. She tells me we don't own any metal chairs and that she hadn't been home up until an hour ago. I told her I came home and there was a metal chair just sitting in the middle of the hallway after I had gotten back from the garage. She told me to show her the chair, and when I went out to the garage to show it to her, it was gone. I looked high and low for that metal chair but couldn't find it. I swore to her that I wasn't on drugs and that I wasn't imagining things. She thought what I was telling her was strange but didn't pay much attention to it. I never saw that chair again, nor do I know where it came from or where it went. Okay, so this was probably 15ish years ago now. When I was in high school, my group of friends used to spend a lot of time at a particular friend's house because it was huge. It was also quite an old house, but his parents were cool with us basically taking over when we were there. We'd make dinner for about 10 people, stay up late listening to music and playing video games, and they never minded. Anyway, one evening we're all sitting in his room, watching TV. It's dark and the lights are on but the curtains are open. Suddenly 2 different people on opposite sides of the room jump like they've been startled and look around. Both of them explain they saw in the reflection in the window, on the 2nd floor, just for your information, somebody walk across the room. None of us had moved. It freaked a few of the girls out and we had to calm them down a bit. Flashed a couple of weeks later, and we found a pack of cards in our friend's house that had letters on them. Somebody suggested we could use these as an OEG board and figure out if our friend's house was actually haunted. We got a big wooden board, I think it might have been the top of a table once upon a time. Arranged the cards in a circle around the edge with an extra 2 homemade yes and no cards. Got a glass and off we went. It started to answer questions, telling us it was a man who used to live in the house and who died there. We asked when he died and just got the answer long. We asked if he was moving the glass, and he said yes. This is where I decided to be dumb, and I asked if he could move anything else other than the glass. Yes. We all paused and listened for the sound of something moving, but nothing happened. We asked if he had moved something. Yes. Nothing happened again, so we moved on and asked some more questions. This was at 10:30 p.m. After a while longer we said goodbye. I think at least one of us was aware enough about OEG board law to know we had to close a conversation properly, and then a little later we all went home, a little spooked but enjoying it nevertheless. I walked home with another friend who lived nearby. As I walked in my front door, my mum called through to me to be careful in my room because a mirror had fallen off the wall earlier and they weren't sure if they'd picked up all the bits of glass. When I asked when this had happened, she told me about 10:30. The same time I asked the spirit to move something. I did not sleep well that night. TLDR, my younger brother began seeing children emerging from his closet. I saw them too. I have a few stories that happened over the course of my life, but nothing freaked me out more than my younger brother one night when we were kids. I lived in an older house, built in the early 80s, and there were some weird things that would happen. Objects in places we didn't leave them, voices, lights, nothing particularly creepy though. Except after this. I have two brothers and we are all exactly 2 years apart. When I was young, roughly 9, my brothers about 7 and 5 shared a room. Across the hall was my room. Our doorways looked at each other. I woke late into the night/early morning as it was still dark to a methodic click sound. I could see my brother's light turning on, off, periodically and in succession. I wandered into the doorway and watched as my brother B sat in the top bunk, a look of horror on his drained looking face with his little arm reached down clicking the light switch. I don't know how long I stood there, but soon my mother was at my back, watching for a moment before scolding my brother for being up so late and playing with the light. He turned, dead-eyed, to my mother and I and stared coldly for a few moments. In the most monotone voice I've ever heard from a 7-year-old, he told my mom they can only move in the dark. They keep getting closer. When I turn the light off, they can almost touch me now. Goodbye. My mom freaked, took all 3 of us to her room, shut and locked the door, and we slept with the light on. The next morning I asked my brother what he saw. He again got a very dark look about him before explaining to me that children kept coming out of his closet. Except they were darker than the darkest shadow, except for white lines that surrounded the outline of their forms. They had empty white eyes. Every time the light was off they inched closer. When the light was on, they vanished. When the light turned back off, more descended from the closet and made their way to his bed, climbing up the bunk bed and reaching for him, but leaving the youngest alone and asleep. It freaked me out. But from here it only got worse. This became a nightly occurrence and both my brothers soon began asking for a chained lock on the closet door. My mother obliged so they could finally get some sleep. I started staying with them at night to help them sleep. The night the lock was placed on the door, we fell asleep with relaxed fears. Until the door violently slammed open as far as the chain would allow, and I swear to God all 3 of us saw small black hands clawing through the gap. This became almost nightly. It quickly evolved into whispering coming from the door of the closet. Coos and coaxes to near the door. Desperate pleads to just let us out. My mom thought we had overactive and gruesome imaginations. Maybe she was right. This continued for almost a year, and as suddenly as it began it just stopped on the year mark. No sounds, no traces. No nothing. We carried on with life. Other strange things occurred from time to time. Some scary, some odd. We grew older. We stayed in that house for 13 years. We moved and I moved out of my mom's house. I got my own place and by some stroke of absent-mindedness moved into the house directly beside my childhood home. By now I had forgotten about all the strange things of my childhood and didn't remember them until I was walking my dog one night close to 3 a.m. You see, I work until midnight. So I'm up all night. My brother's childhood bedroom window faces the backyard of my current home. I looked up as my dog started staring in that direction to find the light going on and off. Methodically. Very slowly. I found it strange. It became a nightly occurrence on my walk to look up and see the light. I remembered the children from the closet. The strangest part for me is the family that moved into my old home is a single mother of 3 boys. Just like my family. And just like my family, the children were fairly close to the ages of 9, 7, and 5, give or take a year or two. After doing some research, I found that that particular house was built in 1980 or 1981. It held a nice young family until 1987 when an electrical fire broke out. The family was a father who worked in the mines and was often away, a stay-at-home mom, and her 3 boys, roughly 8, 6, and 4. When the fire broke out, the boys became trapped in the bedroom my brother slept in. The boys of the original family died of smoke inhalation. Only 2 of the 3 bodies were recovered. The mother made it out alive and later took her own life. The house laid in ruin for 2 years and was rebuilt in 1989 to 1990. In that time, several strange deaths occurred. A husband and wife moved in with an infant daughter who died of SIDS 5 months after moving in. In 1991, a single man moved in and hung himself in the basement. In 1993 or 1994, a large family of 6 containing a mother, father, 3 boys and a daughter moved in. The daughter slit her wrists in the bathtub and died of blood loss. A year later, the oldest son shot himself in the basement. The house remained empty until 1997 when a widow and her daughter moved in. No incidents were recorded and the family moved out in 1999, the year my brother was born. Families were in and out without incident until 2004 when my family moved in. We moved out in 2012. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel for more edit videos like this. Don't forget to smash that like button and stay crispy, guys.